Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, it is noon on November 18th, Friday the 18th, and this is the meeting of the Merrimack Town Center Committee, meeting in the Thornton Room, and we have all of our members on the committee are present today. So we have a good attendance, and we have some interesting things to report. I'm going to designate Michael Redding to be the minute taker for this meeting. I'll remind everybody to turn on your microphones when you're speaking, so as the little green light comes on. And is Steve Keach has arrived. Hi, Steve. Welcome. I just called the meeting to order, Steve. So, do you need any setup equipment or anything? Not much, okay. Then the first order of business I will entertain is a motion to approve the minutes of September 30th, which is our last meeting. And I sent out copies of those minutes to everybody, and I hope everybody's happy with them. And if not, here's the time to say so.
Just one change.
Yes,
That I saw was the bid opening for the Souhegan River Trail was November 10, not November 15.
Oh, okay. That was
The
a
only thing I
change.
saw.
At one time, it was the 10th, and I didn't make the change. But okay,
11:10.
11:10 is, yeah,
Thank you.
I had a question too.
yeah.
5B to 5D, it says there was no discussion of these items, and there's like a whole paragraph after that.
That would be for the items 5D,
5B to 5D,
5D
under new
on the-
business.
yeah, on the agenda. So whatever the agenda items were at that time, that's what he was referring to. You see how on our agenda now we have 5A
Right,
through H?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was referring to the old agenda. Is what
Right. It's
yeah.
just that it says there was no discussion, and then it has a paragraph of discussion. I guess I'm just confused.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we should list the topics instead of saying 5B through.
Yeah, I was trying to save paper, but okay. All right, we can fix that. I don't see if I can find a copy of the minutes. That was the annual report.
Like the 13th or something, or
The last meeting was September 30th.
30th.
Yeah,
No, October.
October 30th. Yeah. I don't. Draft minutes of meeting, August 19th I got here.
It wasn't the 21st or the 28th. The 21st was the third Friday. The 28th was the fourth.
I thought the 30th. I thought we met.
That's a Sunday, so
Oh, I guess we didn't meet on Sunday.
my wedding
yeah.
anniversary. I know that date very well.
Yeah.
Don't forget. that one, right?
Okay, tell us how you'd like to straighten it out.
You'd like to clear out what is not had no discussion and what did, right? There's a
Well,
paragraph
like-
below.
Like you say here, Nelson is looking to petition the town council for sidewalk funding. What item? And then you talk with Finley, and I was just curious as what item that was then.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, we can clean that up.
Okay, we'll clean it up. You want to see it in revised form, and I'll bring it next time, or I'll send it out to everybody, and I'll send it around to everybody so they can look at it. Okay? I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's
For
okay.
some reason, I can't even find my own copy of those minutes. I got tangled up this past week this past month, because of the presentation I gave to the town council, kind of got in the way of the reports of this meeting. Draft minutes of me. September 30th was the last meeting. 'Cause isn't that, that's what I've got here.
Okay. Don't remember when was the last, I didn't attend it.
You
so-
were not here.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yes.
But,
The one-
because I was traveling.
Master plan.
Which I think was,
September 30 was our last meeting.
Yeah, that's the one she's talking, that's the one we're talking about. We're talking about the last meeting
okay, it
and,
was the 30th.
I've
Okay.
got old- and where were you seeing that part that says, oh, there was no 5B through 5D?
Yes, that's exactly where.
Okay, I'm on the page now. And then it goes on after that. Yeah, I kind of ran them all together there, is what I did. We'll sort it out. I didn't have my usual assistant with the minutes. We'll fix it up so the records will be good and we'll have, yeah, these, once we approve them is when they go on file in the town office and they become a part of the town records. Somebody pointed out that, was it you that pointed out that there's a RSA that supposedly requires our minutes to be available 5 days after the meeting is over, right?
Right.
And-
right. Upon request or something
Yeah,
for someone.
so I'll say they're available on request and we'll keep doing what we're doing because I want them to be approved when they go into the file finally. But if somebody is anxious to see what we did, we can make the draft copy available. It's marked a draft. Okay?
Right.
Everybody's okay with that? We'll pass over it. We'll fix them up and give you
So
another
we're
shot.
still waiting for a motion though for approval or no?
Well, I was, and then I suggested that instead of approving them, we fix them.
Okay.
The way she
And approve
suggested.
them okay.
And
All right,
I
great.
send them out again.
Okay. So
So,
we'll vote in next meeting. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So our next order of business today is the discussion of the high school traffic plan, high school master plan. And we're pleased to have Steve Keach with us today. He's the principal owner, operator of Keach Nordstrom Associates, who's an engineering firm here in town. And he does a lot of good things for the town in his spare time.
Thank you.
Tried to.
And thank you, Steve. Yeah.
Good, how are you?
Hey, Steve. Just want to mention while Steve's passing this out, that he's been working with us for quite a while now
Oh, this is one.
on this master plan to include
You want to share with me?
everything from the high school going down to Babusick Lake Road. Because we recognize that really when you're talking town center and town center committee, one of the most populated and often used areas is the Master Cola complex, the high school complex, everything like that. So a couple things we want to do from a prioritization standpoint, and Steve's going to work on that and get us cost estimates based upon that. But first thing I want to do is to, in next year's budget, put in a certain sum to remove the red building that we've been staring at for the past 5 years, otherwise known as Brentwood, because it's not being used and we're just paying money to heat and keep it alive, and it's not being repaired either. So that would need to go. Also in this plan would be the demolition of the Blue House Special Services, the greenhouse, the current SAU, and then a new SAU eventually, probably at the end of O'Gara Drive. where we need some stuff to happen in that space also. We need to coordinate with the town of Merrimack because there is a skateboard park there, and they would have to either relocate that, which I don't think is probably possible, or create another space, Parks and Rec, to recreate that space in another location. So it has multiple facets to it and multiple parts to it. And we're just trying to wrap our arms around which domino should fall first and what that's going to look like. So Steve isn't at that point right now, unless you are and you didn't tell me and you're going to surprise me today. All right, all right. So we've known one another for a long time, so we can do this. I can say Steve obviously dressed up for this occasion here. So that's what we want to do. We want to chunk everything out in like a 5-year, 6-year, however many year plan it's going to be. Let's get something done, you know. And one of the things when I drive up to the high school, I don't think it has a sense of presence. It's not telling me this is Merrimack High School. This is really it. Part of that is all the overhead wires that you see. I hate that. You notice when we built the middle school, you don't see any overhead wires. We buried everything underground. You know, I didn't even want the light poles. It's all underground utilities. I didn't even want to see strings of wires going up to the middle school when we did that I said the new middle school, right? It's 22 years ago, you know.
Is it
Ah,
that
that's-
long?
Oh, it opened in 2004, so not quite,
Yeah,
you know.
Wow.
But I you know, that's a sign I've been here way too long. You know, when I start referring, and sometimes I'll call the middle school the upper elementary school.
Yeah.
I'll call that the middle school.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
old middle school. So I don't know what's going on. So yeah, we want to just lay this out finally in a progression of how we can go ahead and do it all at once and make it all cohesive while we're taking this in bits and pieces, because you can't do it. You know, our construction period is what, 6 weeks in the summer if we're lucky. You know, we can't tie up roads and bridges and delay buses and everything like that like Kyle can, because he can work during the school year. You know, we have to get in, get out, do our stuff, make it presentable for people and students and staff, and then we can. That's what makes it kind of a challenge. So, having said that, whether or not it made a lot of sense or not, hey, at least I got to say something. I'll turn it over to a much more eloquent gentleman than I, Mr. Stephen Keach.
Thank you, Mr. Chevino. I think most of you know me.
Is your light on? Make sure your green
It
light.
is now.
Yeah, thanks.
As Matt indicated, conversations about this master plan for the high school property began between myself, and Tom Tuso several years ago. And what we've exchanged a lot of ideas and thoughts, and one of the things I want to talk to you folks about today is the central portion of the master plan will involve betterments in both pedestrian and vehicular sense of transportation. Obviously, most, if not all of us, are familiar with the high school, and you know, what we see there today is essentially a culmination of evolution of an ever expanding campus until it's reached its current level of build out, which given enrollments is probably likely to remain that way for a very long time. The grounds, if you will, at the front of the school, the parking arrangements and so forth, again, are part of that evolution, and don't necessarily create traffic patterns both at the pedestrian level and the vehicular level that work as efficiently as it could. On the drawings that I'm going to present up at the board here in a moment, and I gave some copies of, I passed out. I guess I was a couple short, so I would ask you folks to share as I talk. But the this was the original presentation plan that we put together for an introductory meeting we had with the building committee. Finley was at that meeting. Matt was at that meeting as well, back just before the first of the year, and actually late spring. At present, over the summer, we've completed a detailed existing condition survey of the portion of the campus that would be affected by the master plan. Basically, the southerly limits are the athletic complex behind the school, where the bleachers for the football field are, extending through the balance of the district property out to Babusick Lake Road. That's involved in the high school piece. From a transportation standpoint, two sheets of the drawing. I'll go back out to, it was kind of backwards, starting at,
Oh,
when we get spoken
You
to,
need-
this always happens.
Test 1, 2.
Remember when we didn't have these things. Obviously, on the photograph, this is the high school complex here. Today, we have a series of parking areas that are situated to the west of O'Gara Drive that, in part because of poles that are electrical distribution line that passes through there under an easement, are not connected. We also have this large paved area in front of the school, the SAU building, the Brentwood School building, and the special services buildings that Matt spoke of. We also have public streets to the north, McElwain Street and Woodbury Street. Woodbury Street, as you're very familiar with in the Town Center Committee, had some substantial rework done to it this past year. And there's a sidewalk there that runs the full length of Woodbury from McElwain and the high school site to DW Highway. Those of you who are familiar with vehicular operations around the high school campus in the morning and in the afternoon during arrivals and departures, understand that there's a tremendous amount of organized chaos that happens there, a lot of which is driven by current conflicts at both the vehicular and pedestrian level. Obviously, we have staff arriving, departing. We have students arriving, departing by vehicle, personal vehicle. We have buses arriving and departing. And we have parent pickups, drop-offs occurring, all within very short, tight windows of time. Because of the conflicts that exists out here with people entering and exiting parking and doing what they need to do, it creates tremendous amount of conflict and it's driven by the need for many left turning movements. What you see here in yellow is predominantly our walkway system, these large yellow lines. We envision those as being walkways. In many locations now, such as along O'Gara, between O'Gara and the student parking lot, there is a paved 6 to 8 foot sidewalk there from beginning here and extending south. If you turn the page, we plan on taking that all the way out to Babusick Lake Road, but I'll get to that a little later. What trying to do by virtue of this plan is to eliminate as many conflicting turning movements as possible. One of the things that part of that is if you picture in the morning, arrivals, students, staff arriving from Babusak Lake Road, entering the site, or departing later in the day. Pretty much every one of these half dozen or more small parking areas is disconnected from the other because of the poles. What we are planning on doing as part of the master plan is relocating those trays of parking further to the west so that the aisle that connects them is to the west of where those pole stanchions are situated. That'll do two things for us. Number one, it will enable us to load these lots in a serial fashion from north to south in the morning with 2 points of access. This location here is where the access to the F8 Everett Turnpike is for its gated access. We're planning on utilizing a portion of that, reconstructing that to feed this lot so that from a student standpoint, it populates from south to north, depending upon your time of arrival. These fingers will, in the islands where the stanchions are situated, will pick up those pedestrians that are created by those spaces and bring them back to an improved walkway that runs along in parallel to O'Gara and ultimately the school. In the vicinity immediately west of the actual academic building, we'll extend parking further to the south to create additional faculty staff parking immediate proximity to the school. We'll also eliminate these ADA spaces off the north side of the northerly facade of the building and have them over here in a protected location so that those vehicles entering and exiting those spaces are not conflicting with pickup and drop-off activities immediately in front of the school. It'll also enhance the aesthetic appearance of the front of the school as well. And that's part of it. And Matt alluded to that in his introductory remarks. The other thing that by moving these trays of parking to the west is going to help us achieve is aesthetic benefit. Today, the west side of the walk is separated from the trays of paved parking with a guardrail that is not there for any other reason to keep cars from driving over the sidewalk, it appears. We will remove that guardrail, and by having additional green space between the back of the lot and the westerly edge of the walkway and the easterly edge of parking, we'll probably have something in 10 to 15 feet of green space in there that we will create berms on for planting to soften the entrance, the aesthetic appearance of the entrance to the campus. Effectively, the parking will move to the west a distance approximately equal to the length of a parking space. So where the easterly parking is today will be where the aisle will be tomorrow, and then the remaining spaces on the westerly side will be closer to the turnpike on school district property. What this does for us is it confines entrances and exits from this primarily to 2 points. We'll have a point here where we feed it. We have another point here where we can feed it or allow people to exit. The main flow of traffic on O'Gara will continue as it does today in the path that it utilizes today, come around the front of the school. We are disconnecting all parking from this loop in front of the school. There will be no parking spaces accessible through this horseshoe. In front of the school itself, we'll have two one-way aisles that run parallel from west to east for pickups and drop-offs. Then those will be separated by a textured island between the two of them that will probably be cobble or plate, granite plate, something that has a textural difference. And of course, coming from the current entrance, main entrance to the school, out and to the gym and so forth, out to this parking lot, we'll create a pedestrian area that we will highlight and create access to not only the perimeter walkways and the parking, but also frame a proper entrance to the building. The other main entrance to the building over here will effectively remain as it is. We will rework the curb line along this perimeter to be wider, to create more enhanced opportunities for pedestrian use, and basically feed the sidewalk that now exists on Woodbury. Bus operations will remain largely unaffected. Today, buses enter behind the SAU building, come around back of the school. In the afternoon, they queue up back here, and then by maintaining that, we're keeping the bus traffic out of the flow path of what's going on and allowing that a prioritized movement right out to Babusick Lake Road.
Yeah, if I could, little commentary, because I've been looking at that for the last 23 years, and the buses queue up at the middle school in like two waves, 18 and 18, and then they travel on down to the high school in two waves. So you get a wave of 18 coming down straight to the high school, and then you got a log jam of kids trying to leave at the same time. So the buses really have to almost act like a railway car in order to block any student or staff member with a little bit of a lead foot to try and sneak in between the chains so they could get out. So that creates a massive traffic jam when you've got a lot of parents picking up their kids also, and 400 and something cars. Regardless of our enrollment, there's always 400 cars there that are student cars trying to leave the facility. So that's a concern of mine, that we could maybe look at, trying to adjust it somehow to keep the traffic out of there, to allow the buses to roam freely in the back like they should. But that is something that you have to come. At around 20 past 2, come on by and see what you think, because
On foot.
on foot, because you're not getting anywhere. I'll tell you, if we have meetings someplace scheduled at a building, we have to leave at like 2:00, because anytime between 1:15 and 2:30, 2:35, forget it. You're locked in there. You are locked in there. It says no parking in back of where we park our cars, but that doesn't mean anything, because you have them stacked right near your bumper. You're stuck. So we gotta look at that in another light of where to. And I mentioned this to Steve, and I don't think it really shows on this plan other than the queuing area, where to queue up 50 cars that are waiting for their kids, because that's around the number that I count, around 40 of them waiting there. And also some of them are on our front lawn. I don't care, the grass isn't that good, so whatever. It just adds to the rustic nature of the building. So it's fine. But it is a cause for concern, and everybody's been really good. I don't hear that many horns blowing that much, but sometimes people get a little bit of impatient. But we've had, knock on wood, we could have had some bad instances there, but everybody seems to behave fairly nicely, which is nice. But I'd like it to. It's like the mall, getting out of the mall at Christmas time.
I was gonna say it's like going to the Patriots game.
There you go. Same thing.
But I got a question for you. So where the existing student parking is, and you talked about the light poles and the divisions there, so it kind of contains, it's like, if you want to call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 park,
Yeah.
yeah. You're talking about removing all that, so it would be a straight, so you could go from the top up there all the way to the bottom without anything impeding you. My issue with that, or my comment with that, is the high school I went to had a similar parking arrangement with nothing in between, and it became a nice drag strip.
What we're gonna be doing here, at each of these locations, where we have crossings to the walk, we build speed tables. A speed table compared to a speed bump, like we all know what a speed bump is. Speed table will be about 6 to 8 feet in width, and it'll be raised in elevation. So it remains ADA accessible, and it will be textured differently to feed these walks, Bill. So that, you know, the same lengths that we have today will be where, because each place where there's a stanchion, we need to build a walk around it. Basically, the stanchions will be situated right about locations such as this, so that they are out of harm's way, and the travel route is to the west of it. And then those speed tables will create, they're typically 6 inches higher than the paved surface to either side of them. So they're intended to slow down vehicles.
Yeah, I think it'd be fairly effective, seeing that a lot of the cars that I see are probably a ½ inch off the ground anyway. So you don't want to mess with that speed table, you know. So, and
But getting back to Matt's point about the parent drop-offs, one of the reasons that we are isolating this area in front of the school is exactly for that queuing. If you look at the flow on here, there is absolutely no reason for anybody to enter this direction from here during those periods of time unless you're picking up and dropping off. The only exception to that, of course, is during the afternoon when buses blast off in the northerly direction from the back. That can be controlled. But the these areas in here, and there's 2 of them, the thought process is this will be, even though it's one way, we're not narrowing it. It'll still be 24 feet. So in reality, we'll probably have two lanes, if you will. One is for bypass movements, and the other is for queuing at the enhanced sidewalk, so that students are entering and exiting from the vehicle on a passenger side, and going to or from where they need to go. We're also eliminating the parking area here. And feeding that, we're doing basically an extension of Woodbury Street, connecting O'Gara and McElwain, so that we have this flow external to the school, and this parking lot here, the other point of access or egress is here, that lines up with that, so that we can use all 3 public streets for arrivals and departures with direct access to them all. All of this parking in here will be accessed to and from Woodbury Street Extension. Obviously, the demolition of the Brentwood building and so forth is going to be an initial phase of that, because that street would go right through where that building is today, right? So, and as you can see, around anywhere where vehicles may be parked, we're doing a perimeter walkway to create safe and convenient access from parking to the school.
I've got I have a comment I'd just love
Sure, go ahead.
to make. I don't think it's geared towards Steve's presentation, which is excellent, by the way. It's mostly towards Matt. Steve brought up, he said there's basically 2 main entrances at the school. You've got the one you have the one on the east side, right? That's basically used every day, student arrival, or if you go to the main office during school hours, there's that entrance there. Then there's this other entrance that leads directly to the gym, the CAF, the little theater. This is less about infrastructure, and the word aesthetic has come up a couple times. I think this is a good opportunity for someone to just make the suggestion that maybe, especially with those handicap spaces moving over, if there's anything you could do, I don't know if it's signage, but to show the differences between those two entrances, because whenever you have an event after school, like Merrimack TV covers, the concerts in the gym or the basketball games, I've noticed people arrive, they're not sure which entrance to go to. So if if you're not familiar with the school itself, you don't know which way to enter. If there's anything that you could think of that adds to that aesthetic and also make it very clear, events and activities, that's the door you want to go through.
See, what you're, there are actually, the first one you were talking about where you go straight in and there's this cafeteria in the gym where Steve's pointing.
Yeah.
That was the old entrance to the school.
Yes.
Back in 2020, when I got here, we built the 3-story addition. So that became the main entrance to the school. Can you see right where Steve's pointing?
That was in 20. That was long before 2020.
No, that was 2020. I got here. O'Neill handed me a set of plans and said, build it. So that was, 2000.
2000. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's okay, Matt. Time's an illusion.
Time's an illusion.
Yeah.
Yes. The time
In
was
2000.
2000, 22 years ago. So that is the main entrance. Once school is in session, everything else is locked down.
Right.
You're not supposed to be able to get into that other area.
Right.
However, at night, if we're having meetings, budget committee
Yeah.
meetings, basketball, whatever, we want people coming in there. We don't want them going into the main office
Right.
entrance where you have the vestibule and you show a badge, because guess what? There's no one in the main office.
Maybe there's something you can do with lights.
Lights, sign, something like that.
Yeah,
to
so
draw
that
attention.
if there's automatic lights or something, maybe they're lit tomahawk colors or, white and blue or something right out front so that people gravitate right towards that entrance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good comment, Nick. Appreciate it.
I mean, part of that is often done with a uniform sign package. Right? Think about shopping plaza, outlet plaza. There's a uniform sign package so that people understand that there's a hierarchy there of what they're looking for. I think that's something that makes a good suggestion. But part of, again, what we're trying to do here is to highlight those two areas so that everything, access, egress to the academic complex occurs logically at those locations, and you're drawn to it. Kind of continuing, one of the other pieces of this that you notice or very quickly is that this area over here, which is paved parking today, won't be paved tomorrow. Yet, taking that much parking pavement out of the equation because of efficiency, we've got an equal number of parking spaces. The only new parking we're building is here for the faculty staff immediately adjacent to the gym, in close proximity to the building, and frankly to create some additional parking for events that occur at the football field and so forth.
Yeah, because that lot that Steve is showing, the last one before you get into the football field, that is non-existent right now. That's
turf.
Dirt,
Yeah.
right? Because when I forget when we did that, when we were doing the switch gear outside the high school, we had an opportunity. They needed to store material someplace, so we just made that dirt, and they use it.
Yep.
So that could be a perfect place to push parking closer to the back of the school. And if you're having football games and whatever, that's gonna be your primo spot to park, because
It's
you're
an
right
un-
near the concession stand, the
Right.
brand new concession stand.
It's a underutilized area today,
Yeah.
and obviously part of when we're looking at transportation parking needs, we recognize a hierarchy. Obviously, reserving this with these compartmentalizations for faculty use, separated from student use, separated from public use, is part of the equation. And by having control points that basically create rooms that can be assigned by administration for different purposes, and those can change over time. But part of, we think of a vehicle, as I said, we're trying to eliminate as many conflicts as possible. The activities that occur transportation-wise, vehicular transportation-wise, in front of the school today is a huge problem because it creates so many conflict points. This endeavors to eliminate all of them. The only conflict point that we'll have is when buses leave, they will enter a stream. The predominant will be in a counterclockwise rotation of this way. A vehicle can enter a bus. Obviously, this area is restricted to bus use only. Enter from over here as the only way that you can break in there. And the bus could go either way, I suppose, although it's anticipated most of them will continue on O'Gara out to Babusick Lake Road. This whole tray of parking in here will be isolated from that horseshoe by being access and egress from what I'm calling Woodbury Street Extension today only. Outbound vehicles would take a right, outbound vehicles can go straight, take a left, or in the morning they come in and populate that way. Thought process is that this be predominantly over here, the area to the north of whatever percentage of this administration needs to maintain for faculty staff parking. Can vary over time, but the rest of it gets isolated from that. And again, from a control point standpoint, access and egress is limited to really these two principal locations. We are showing a interconnect over here that may be gated. That's an operational thing that will play itself over time. But that creates another opportunity for maintenance and so on and so forth, so we don't have dead-ended parking. Getting back to this, we're eliminating a tremendous amount of impervious area by doing this. These areas between the walkways and the trays of parking will be green space. Again, for landscaping and for environmental reasons associated with stormwater. Obviously, the school district, much like Kyle's department, is subject to the provisions of MS4, and we're eliminating a tremendous amount of paved surface by doing this, yet holding the number of parking spaces equal. It also helps us get rid of that industrial look that Matt spoke of in his opening remarks. We're introducing these areas of landscape that are not just lawn areas. Some of them will be berms. Part of what we'll be doing when we're doing construction is we'll be generating material that has no useful purpose in construction. It is expensive to truck off the site, so if we can use some of it in constructing berms, we will do that along in parallel, and it also helps move the job quicker because, as Matt indicated, we have that precious 8-week period that is really from the conclusion of school, the months of July and August, to be able to do things. In order to do this work, we're looking at a reclaimed stabilized base on all the paved surface. We'll basically take the pavement and what gravel is below it, grind it, make a product out of it, and use that. Again, it moves the job along faster, and it allows us to realize benefit in terms of cost effectiveness of the pavement materials that the town has invested in, the district has invested in over the years, keeping it on site, allowing the work to progress quite quickly. From a stormwater standpoint, these green spaces that we're creating around will also create infiltration spaces for stormwater to find its way back into the tens of feet of sand that underlie this site. Right? So I'm going to turn the page and look at the other end of this thing. Obviously, Matt indicated. Any questions?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Did you say that the bottom 64 spaces on the southwest side of the high school are for teacher, faculty parking?
Potentially, and that's what we put them
Yeah,
there for.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Now, accessing that would be way up north of that at that second entrance. as you come
Either of
down?
those two spaces.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks. And then while you're on that page, there's one arrow you might get rid of possibly on starting in the bus loop on the coming down McElwain. They would take a left onto the bus loop. There's an arrow
Over
goes
here?
straight to a one-way. Yeah.
Yep.
See that arrow right there where your
Yep.
finger is?
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, I mean, that allows, from this point here, Finley, it's one way. We need to feed that because the grade here doesn't allow us to come in from Woodbury. There's a pretty good embankment there today
Right.
between here and here. I'd love to have been able to come in directly from Woodbury and feed that, but
Yeah, but no, you should. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it should be a left turn.
so
out.
that's restricted to bus traffic only, and how we'll accomplish that is put appropriate signage out here, authorized, used one way, that type of thing. So it'd be a one-way do not enter sign there, but only buses can be able to have the opportunity to violate that.
I don't know if you should be a left turn farther down.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, there's two arrows. If you look at it, one's taking a left-hand turn to do the bus loop, and the other one's going straight.
Basically, just to show that that is two-way at that point.
Yeah, so
right?
that's not, there aren't gonna be any cars going straight, meeting other
No.
cars going the other way. That's
It would be a
just-
left turn into the superintendent's
Ye-
office is my guess. With the second arrow, should be probably a little bit farther
Yeah,
south and then a left turn.
Yeah.
But I get what it is. So.
If you turn the page, you see, again, going back to Matt's opening remarks, we're envisioning the future SAU building at this location. I know there's been discussions with others. I feel strongly that that's the best location for it for several reasons. Obviously, if we start down at DW Highway and we work our way west along Babusick Lake Road, between civic buildings, library, this building, other buildings, police station, so forth, two churches, a fraternal organization, the schools themselves. There's a very civic theme to this area. I feel that by having the SAU building join the club, if you will enhance that image. Number two, it is 2022, and with the craziness on the planet, as we do planning, I started my career 38 years ago. What we do today is completely different than what we did then. Anytime that we can separate the public, operations in this building, the SAU building, are 365 days a year. People need to come and go from there at times when they have no purpose of being on a school campus, right? And if we could separate that from an operations and security standpoint, so much the better. Also, the SAU building is common to all schools in Merrimack, not just the high school. So having people come and go that may be involved with Reeds or Thorntons or any of the middle school or what have you, from there, it takes that transportation need away from the high school. Probably not a whole lot of trips a day, but certainly some. Feel that's a really excellent place for that building. the yellow line that you see is that sidewalk that, you know, the sidewalk kind of peters out today down a little bit to the south down in here. We carry that same walkway all the way out and knit into the network that is on Babusick Lake Road. The one thing it's not shown on here, my son Mike, who is a project engineer that is working with me on this week, has done a layout here. Came about as a result of a discussion that we had at Matt's office last week. To the outbound lane will be 2 lanes. We will separate left vehicles that are exiting O'Gara who wish to take a left from those who wish to take a right. So there'll be 2 parallel lanes there in a single inbound lane. Again, for operational perspective, I mean, we build a pretty good queue there, particularly in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's almost what you have, not by design, but by practice when you're leaving my office and I'm going past Town Hall and I hit the stop sign at the end of McElwain. There's usually people who are taking a left leave enough room in a right-hand lane so you can take a right-hand turn, even though it's not designed that way. That's what really happens.
Yeah,
And
the
are
big
you
issue, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just, we're talking McElwain, not O'Gara. Is that what you're talking about, Steve?
He's talking O'Gara.
He's
talking
talking
about
O'Gara.
but you're
I
just
just wanted to
talking
say
about-
that
he's
it's
talking-
organically happening at the end
Exactly.
of McElwain already. So this wouldn't be that far afield. This would just be an official one, and the one on McElwain.
Right.
is
And this sets
not
up so easy to accomplish that because we're coming along this curve to the left. Obviously, we got a fence line here that is a fence line. It's going to be a fence line. So basically, the right turn lane would be approximate the existing edge of pavement. The left turn outbound lane would pretty much be on today's inbound lane. And coming out of this curve, we taper out and be able to create the inbound lane and sidewalk. And there's plenty of space between the pavement and the easterly sideline of the abutting parcel. Right? There's some poles in there that we have to dance around. But speaking of which,
So, Steve, real quick, the biggest challenge with that kind of configuration, and I see it in McElwain all the time, when you have the left and rights, it makes it really difficult on the left-hand turns because the right-hand car blocks your sight distance. And there can be some pretty hairy maneuvers because you don't see the car coming.
yeah, what we
westbound.
normally do is stagger the stop bars. You know, if
Yeah.
anybody pays attention to paint.
Sure. Paint and signs, right? Everyone follows it.
Yeah.
But also further, the buses heading eastbound, turning right down there, it's an awkward turn because they have to go wide. And I don't know if when that overpass is being reconstructed, if that, I'm suspecting it's going to encroach down to that point, the ramp going up to the new bridge.
It may.
So I don't know if they're going to
Yeah.
be tackling any of that.
The limit of the Babusick Bridge project is Hillside Terrace. So right
By the
going
police
up-
station.
Yeah. So past O'Gara.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that might be addressed to a degree. It looks like the property on O'Gara abutting the house in the front of the business on the corner. It looks like there's a reasonable amount of space there,
Yeah.
assuming these lines are accurate. But
You know, obviously, Finley, by the time that a master plan becomes construction plans and as it's phased out, you know, the outcome of that bridge job will be known, right?
sure, yeah.
Well, in addition to that, Steve, we've reached out to DOT and Dawn's going to reach out to McFarland Johnson, who's the design engineer, to ask about the possibility of adding a right turn lane into O'Gara.
Oh, that would be outstanding.
So I don't know if you can work with MJ on that.
Sure.
Um,
I know some of the folks up there. The
it's Mike Long, who's the project
yeah,
manager.
I don't know him. I
Okay.
know the name, but I don't know him personally. Have Mike, when he designs that, right, make it so large that he has to move those poles. All right.
Right.
Speaking of which, obviously, this is a pole farm today, right? You go down there, it looks like, for those of you who are military historians, looks like Rommel's asparagus, right? You know, they used to prevent gliders from landing in France. These transmission line that's throughput line. Those will remain. We're working around those, as I said. We also have a massive pole right here that may remain, probably is going to have to, because it's the feed not only for the high school, but it also back feeds up to the other school complex to the north. From that point, I'd like to think that we'll be able to eliminate all other poles. Today, our light fixtures out there are wooden poles with cobras on them that are energized from lines that connect the dots of the poles. Okay, part of the work will be to put all of the lighting fixtures underground. We're also would be doing what the district has been continuing with what the district's been doing is they've replaced lighting and using LED lighting, far more energy efficient, but it also gives us an opportunity to actually have a lighting designer do a proper lighting plan so we're not under or over lighting as we go. And by creating these, end caps, creates opportunity for placement of those. And I would like to think that when we get into the final design of that the LED lights we do can have a timer so that they have different levels of lighting, increase the level of lighting when it's needed and then lower it to the absolute minimum necessary for security purposes, half a foot candle or something on that order during 3 o'clock in the morning when it's the only function that it has is for security.
Yeah, we have done district-wide LEDs in all the schools. So they're all dimmable and everything like that. And right now, Tom from his computer could drop down lights to parking lot lights to 20% in the evening, depending upon what time it is. So we can already do that. It's kind of like, if you look at Mastrocola Elementary School, the parking lot where the entrance is, we did that a few years ago. And we buried all the lines there, and we put up some nice, I don't know what you call them, Steve, the nice bronze poles with the little coffers around them or whatever.
Correct.
And it just transformed that whole thing from, like Steve said, a pole farm with wires and complete with a pair of flyers hanging from the poles, by their shoelaces. And everything is buried. You go look at it and you go, wow, this is really nice, and it came out spectacular.
And the electric bill goes down.
And the electric bill goes
Substantially.
down.
I think we saved about 80% when we changed all the streetlights. 50%.
Yeah.
I thought it was more than that, but it was substantial anyhow, regardless. It was big.
I'm told that the payback on those is about 3 years. Kyle probably has better numbers than I do.
Yeah,
You bought a few more than I have. But
That's what we were told, like 3 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the other little piece here, it's really got nothing to do with the transportation or overall betterments, but as I said, this whole area in here just doesn't need to be pavement anymore, so it's not going to be. One of the recent discussions we have, well, what do we do with it? Tom has had conversations with the folks at the athletic director, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, about using this area in here as some sort of an athletic field, which would obviously aesthetically and functionally blend very nicely with this over here. For what events, practice, whatever, I'm not certain. But the idea would be to create a field there that could be what it needs to be depending upon the season, is my understanding. So stay tuned on that one. But, this is, when you look at that rectangle, it's the size of a high school regulation soccer field, right? That rectangle that Michael drew there. Now, that's a pretty good sized chunk of lawn, right? When you consider that 2/3 of that, plus the fringe, is pavement that is there today that we don't need tomorrow, yet we don't lose parking spaces, campus wide, shows you how much inefficiency the current arrangement there is in terms of the amount of pavement that is there to accommodate an equal number of parking spaces. My guess is by the time that we're done here, I haven't had Mike run any numbers for me yet. I will. We have a meeting with building committee coming up on the 28th. And I'm going to ask him to run some numbers, at least preliminary numbers based on this layout. I mean, obviously we're adding pavement over here, we're adding a little bit down here, so there's some trade-off. But for the most part, I think the impervious surface here is probably going to be somewhere around 15% less than it is today to do the same thing, right? Any questions? Nelson?
Yeah, a few, Steve. First of all, when you're talking about the moving all that parking to the west, have you considered the reality that the Effie Everett Turnpike is going to be widened, and we're going to lose,
Some land.
yeah, and we're going to lose some buffer.
Mhm.
Okay, and so the buffer that's there, which is pretty good for the purpose it is serving, is going to be diminished. And, do we
Yeah,
have some compensation for that or some way of?
Well, again, we're gonna have material that is generated by the construction that is waste, right?
Yeah,
All right. And just like I would like to have the back of the sidewalk to the front of the spaces in order to do what we need to do to work around those poles, it's probably gonna be somewhere, it could be as much as 20 feet, right, in places, right? That we end up with green. And in order to create that so that it maximizes the aesthetic and it maximizes the efficiency and our ability to lose material that would otherwise have to be trucked away, we create berms down through there. I'm thinking the same thing is going to happen over here. Now, as we look at this on an aerial photograph, it probably looks like there's more impact to the canopy that's there than it really is. Obviously, as a photograph, we're looking at the overhanging canopy of the trees.
yeah.
Probably a median dimension from the current edge of pavement to the west is approximately 20 feet that would be impacted. If we go out there today from that westerly edge of pavement to the actual tree line, there's very few mature trees in that 20 feet. There's a brushy quasi lawn. I think it's used for snow storage, perhaps, Matt. In there today, and in the graded areas that don't have mature canopy. Oh, I can guarantee you, Nelson, there'll be some, but I don't think it's going to be a dramatic loss of canopy.
With what you do.
Mhm.
But what the state does is another question.
Correct.
And I think you should take into consideration that we may be losing some of that buffer that belongs to the state in the widening of.
Yeah, out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, you're looking into the school parking lot as opposed to this buffer of trees that's there today.
It also might be louder.
It may.
Yes.
I mean, the sound.
It
Yep.
may.
Exactly, yeah. I like your relocation of the SAU. I think you presented a good case for moving it. I think that's a good idea and gets it out of the high school campus. You talked about putting you keep saying lighting underground, and I know you don't mean put the lights underground, you mean the wires supplying them.
Correct.
And the lighting still will be there and,
Correct.
and have to be there. The other thing I wanted to ask about is the entrance. What I think is the middle school, or maybe it's the elementary school. It shows on your other plan, right about halfway up your map on the right-hand side, right there, yeah. Any consideration for, I've understood, and I don't go in there for the obvious reasons, the usage, that is a congested area as well. And I don't know if you've taken in,
Really haven't. Matt, you got anything want to add about that?
Well, I remember when we redid that parking lot, there were a bunch of pine trees there, and we just blew it. That one right at the back of.
Right behind the baseball.
Oh, is that what you were talking about? Or you were
no,
talking about the
actually, I'm
asphalt?
talking about
Right
the
here.
actual
Yeah.
entrance and the parking lot
Yes.
and all of that that's there.
Yeah.
Is that, are there issues there that we should be talking about at the same time?
There's not overcrowding issues there at
Well,
all.
actually-
That's for staff. Go ahead, Finley.
Actually, I was gonna bring that up because there's two locations. One is out of the purview of this on McKelwen. That's a nightmare in the morning for not a long period.
Yeah.
But it backs up, jams up, Babushka Lake Road. People are courteous, so they, people scoot around, but there's cars waiting eastbound to turn right down McKelwen. There's cars coming westbound on Babushka trying to turn into McKelwen, and it becomes a short nightmare. Again, it's not a long-lived thing, 20 minutes maybe a little bit more. Down where it is part of this is where Nelson's talking about. In the morning, they changed the traffic now because cars were stacking up on McKelwen Street, heading southbound to turn left at the southerly entrance to that, and they do a serpentine route. Actually, when I take my grandchildren,
Yeah,
they
you go-
right up against the school, but the traffic stacks up. So this year they've had everybody heading northbound on McKelwen, so people go in, turn into a parking lot, turn around, so they're heading up and parked on the right side so traffic can get by until they're letting the kids go in. So that it's an area I don't know what to do with it exactly. I mean, I have an idea, but I don't know if it's, it works as the way it's working, it does okay. But if you want efficiencies and perfection when you come out of this project, it's something that should be probably contemplated.
Yeah, because years ago, the main entrance to Massacola Elementary School was the front parking lot, and that
Right.
parking lot was that was presented. You were probably on the committee because you've been on planning and building committee forever.
And it was all about the middle school when I joined. I wanted to have a say. in the middle school passed before I was on, and I've been stuck ever since.
Yeah,
Let me tell you, that worked fantastically during the election. It did.
So yeah, so we did expand that parking lot, and we made it, but yeah, there are shortfalls with everything. It's like the JMU's arrival in the morning. If you're there at around 8:15, 8:10, right? You're gonna be hanging on McElwain Street for a while before you can dash up the road if you need to dash up the road. So what you do, if you arrive there, is you go to O'Gara, then you come back around, so you avoid that section.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, everybody's doing the U-turn now. Who read the new rules? But some people
who
are
read the
saying
new
yes.
rules?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, there was also a plan right across it to put 2 other parking lots at one point in time when we were doing that, but that just never came to fruition. But yeah, there's always going to be some issues,
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll take a look at that.
They're not worth it's just if they're worth considering now while we're
Yeah.
doing all this
Right.
construction. Yeah.
here has a functional use for the high school for baseball events.
It does.
Yeah.
That's the primary parking lot for the baseball.
Yeah. Okay, if it's adequate, that's my only comments. I think it's a good review, Steve. I'm glad to see it moving along. Does it have any, where do we go from here with this? This has to go to the school board, obviously.
Well, I guess kind of where we'll let Matt pick up on this. Where part of what I've been tasked with, once we know kind of now, I think we're kind of honing in on what it is going to be. The next question is how it comes about, right? Now, obviously, this is an ambitious undertaking.
Yeah.
They'll take the building piece out of it, right? And the biggest constraint that we have from a how standpoint is the reality that we have that 8-week window every year to do work. Right? My recommendation preliminarily to Tom, Matt, and the superintendent last week, is that we focus on what I call pre-construction items, right? Demolition of buildings. Right? As Matt indicated, one of those buildings is no longer used, and it costs money just to sit there empty, right? Get that done. To the extent that we're going to have to do utility accommodations, obviously this mother of all poles here feeds the school and then continues above ground up here. I'd like to have at least through the work area that's suppressed before we start having excavation equipment doing real work. I think we would have a busy season, particularly when you look at, from a utility standpoint, you may be dealing with utility companies and their schedules to do that preparatory work. I wouldn't want to really begin construction of betterments that are school district betterments, permanent betterments, with a site contractor until those accommodations have complete, because there's such an opportunity for collision of critical path with those. The demolition complete, the suppression of any utilities in the work area that want to be suppressed, done, phase one. Get that out of the way. That can happen in one season. The second season, with this pavement work, one of the reasons, there are several reasons that I am convinced that we want to do this with the reclaimed stabilized base construction, is that basically what that does is a machine comes in, grinds the pavement, and blends it with the gravel material below and creates a uniform product that can then be manipulated, compacted, and it becomes the base for the future work. Because we know we have good parent material here, decent material is only going to become better. That can happen pretty quick. You get a Continental or a Busby or somebody in here, all of that work that wants to be ground can probably occur within about a week's time, so that you start then the following week doing doing grading and what we need to do to prepare these areas for pavement. I think all of this pavement can be done in one season, I guess is what I'm saying. And part of that is because the way that we want to drain it. I don't envision need to have a lot of catch basins, underground piping. By creating this green space in immediate proximity, I'd like to grade as much of this to drain, or maybe have a few scuppers or basins, but have them ultimately direct the water for on-site infiltration. This area over in here would be an area that we would use. These areas along in parallel with paved areas would be other areas that we would use for that function, to keep drainage from certain paved areas as close to their disposal point, as close to the point of generation as possible, instead of piping it all over the place, right? That'll also reduce cost. There is flat work and curb work that wants to occur within that part of it too. Obviously, that walkway that extends from front of the school and out to Babusick, we're going to want to have a barrier curb on the front edge of that walk, a vertical curb, and not a mountable curb, because it's a pedestrian route. We are certainly, these areas, high use areas in front of the school, will be concrete. Those will be flat work, highly durable, not going to get beat up. Once we get past here, we'll probably be considering using bituminous, so it goes down fairly quick. But that 8-week period, I keep coming back to that. Because when we have different trades, if you will, you've got a dirt work crew, you've got a curb crew, you've got flat work crew, you got paving crew. You know, to orchestrate that within an 8-week period will most likely dictate whether this gets done in one season or two. I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to sit down with a couple of the contractors that I do a lot of work with. One, the district's primary contractor, Mike Halvatsis from CSSI, will be one. I'll also talk with Paul Busby from Busby Construction because they do so much reclaim work and I have a relationship with them. It's an easy ask for me. And so that we don't find this, the worst possible scenario is we have a wet summer, the year that we've got this ripped up, and those 8 weeks become 6 weeks, right? And in terms of, it's not ready when it's time to go back to school. So we need to be a little bit conservative with that approach. But from the standpoint of planning, my understanding is that, you know, we're kind of moving forward with this master plan. We've identified what needs to occur in the first piece. Matt can talk to you about what he plans on doing with that piece of information. But as the master plan itself, I'm assuming ultimately would be, we're presenting pieces of it to the building committee on the 28th. Ultimately, the school board will have to endorse the master plan, right? Matt, anything I missed there?
No, the school district planning and building committee, and Finley's been a member forever, like I said. Chairman is Rich Hendrick, so we've got a date with Steve and the committee on the 28th to get
28th
that
of
done.
November.
28th of November,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
And then after that, we'll be presenting to the board after we get their input and modifications and changes.
One of the things I want to do with the committee is talk about this phase. We talked about it very lightly. Once we lock in what the phases are going to be, Jeff Quirk in my office is our lead construction engineer. I'm going to have him put together after the 28th. Engineers' construction cost opinions after of what the total ball of wax is going to be, and on a preliminary basis, you know, apart from the building construction, the district has an architect they've worked with, and that building that we see on here is actually a building that was contemplated a number of years ago. It's a placeholder for now. I like the way, I'm not sure if the building that was designed was intended to be at this location, but man, does it work good at this location. You know, you see where north is, so hence where south is. We get opportunity at the front of that building for not direct southern exposure, but indirect southern exposure. Those two sides of the building will be light spaces, you know, comfortable spaces. And by having this at a skew, we don't really have a dark side to the building, right? You know, the during both morning and afternoon. And obviously the site is conducive. Have the people space on the to the southeast side of it, and you know, my goal is to have Matt be able to get a tan while he's at his desk. So, thank you for entertaining us today.
Thank you, Steve, for a good presentation. I think if anybody thinks of something in the night and wants to add to this discussion afterwards, we'll get back to you. We're looking forward to hearing how this goes over with the school board and how it's going to move forward. But that's our interest right now.
Well, super.
Was anybody have anything more they want to ask Steve while he's here, while we're here?
I'm just
We're
I'm
running
curious to know when this is going to be presented to the school board.
Well, we're gonna work that out over the course of the agenda setting meeting, so.
One of the
we'll-
next
we'll
few,
give
yeah.
you, well, yeah, one of the next few.
Okay.
After November 28th, it's gonna
Okay.
be one of those meetings.
Great.
Yeah.
Super.
So thank you, Steve. Good. Folks, I know that we're running a little more time than usual. Maybe I can short circuit some of these things that are on the agenda and bring them up next time. I would like to hear from Kyle on where we are with the Sauhegan River Trail.
You don't want to skip that one?
No, I didn't want to skip that one.
All right, do we want a motion to table all the other items except for the Sauhegan?
Let's see, I'd like to hear from other people. If you want to stay and keep working this agenda, I'm okay with that, but,
I'm good till 1:30, so.
okay, then we better not get into all of these, but we can prioritize. If that's the wish of the board, I'd entertain a motion if you want to do that, Mike, if you feel that's.
Yeah, take.
Thank you, Steve.
Which ones would you like? The Sauhegan Trail? Anything else? Anybody else want anything else to be addressed?
You had a topic that you wanted to discuss a little bit on the effects on the.
Why don't we go to 1:30, so let's go with the Sauhegan River Trail.
Yeah,
And if there's any time left over, we can talk about another topic.
I like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
let's-
Motion
let's
by-
just-
By Bill, I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Kyle, you got the floor. You won.
Thanks, Nelson. This will actually be kind of brief anyway. So we opened up bids for the River Trail project on November 10th. We had 6 companies purchase plans and specs, but unfortunately we only had one bidder. And the bidder was 65% over engineer's estimate. And they weren't qualified in the as a bridge contractor, as was stipulated in the bid specs. So we've spent the last week having a lot of conversations with our consultant, with TOT, and I think we're at the point where we're going to re-advertise for bid and determine what changes we need to make to try and solicit bidders. I did reach out over the past week to the 5 companies that took out plans but didn't bid. And the primary response as to why they didn't bid was they're already booked for all of 2023. And couple that with the inability to hire tradesmen, particularly skilled leadership tradesmen. It was too complicated a project to dedicate personnel to when there's so many projects out there that they can really make a lot of money doing kind of bread and butter projects. So those are the things we're considering. But it looks like for sure at least a rebid.
Yeah. And any, when you talk to these people who know bid, do you think they would consider a rebid? I mean, what is new to them that will make it more attractive, or what would make it more attractive for them?
Yep. So that was one of the questions I asked each of the 5.
Yeah.
And at least a few of them said if the project were able to be constructed towards the end of 2023 into 2024, they do have openings then, and they likely would bid it.
Well,
So that may be the approach we take. Basically, the way we structured the project was it was going to be awarded to the contractor in January, and
Yeah.
they'd have until September to construct it. So
yeah.
basically 6 months,
Yeah.
a couple months of lead time
Mhm.
for procuring submittals and doing all the pre-work, and then about 4 to 6 months of actual construction time. So that's called a calendar basis bid. What we're considering is maybe doing it on a working day basis, which we give them the same amount of time to do the work, that 120 to 180 days, but we open up the window for them to be able to accomplish that work. So we count actual days that they work on the site, and that has to be that time frame versus saying it has to be done within X period of time. So those are a lot of the things we're considering, and we'll come to a conclusion soon.
Soon.
Yeah.
There's some people that suspect the economy might have some difficulties in the near future. If that's the case, maybe people will get a little hungrier and the bidding will be less than 65% above.
I hope so.
And I,
It's hard to know whether the engineer's estimate was off
that's what I was going to ask
or
you.
it's a product of inflation and economy, because we only had one data
Hard to say.
point.
Yeah.
So certainly rebidding and structuring the bid in a way that entices more bidders, it'll at least give us more information to make that basis on. The thought of coming to the town council with one bid that's 65% over was
Isn't that going for?
not something I would have looked forward to.
No, and it's become almost a norm though, because it began for me the first time I noticed the highway garage.
Right.
I thought we were gonna have to scrap the whole project because it
Yes.
was crazy what they were coming up with. And then it just got worse with the screenings facility at wastewater.
Yeah.
And now, well, again, you're right. It's only one proposal. So what does that mean in the scheme of it all? But
Right.
so I don't know if our
But
engineers
as
are,
we saw with the sewer project, we only had one bidder for that as well.
yeah,
And every step we took to try and figure it out, it got
was
more and
more
more
on it.
expensive.
Yeah.
So that's the downside to waiting. But I think it's really we have to, because they weren't pre-qualified as a bridge contractor.
yeah, have to go in.
And that was a requirement of the bid. We may change that requirement and say they just need to be a pre-qualified DOT contractor or something
Yeah.
along those lines. But to give us representative work that demonstrates their ability to do this kind of work.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's a lot of the discussions we've been having.
Was the contractor that bid considered qualified in your opinion, or
Probably. I've never
Yeah.
worked with them,
yeah,
but based on the work that they had on
Yeah.
their website and
yeah,
their qualifications package, and their bonding limit,
mm-hmm.
yeah, I think they would do a fine job.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I would encourage them to bid again.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, given that it's been 7 years since we were first told we were awarded this, another year or two probably isn't so bad.
Right.
But that's how long we've been fooling with
It
it.
is.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions for Kyle?
I mean, I would just echo what Kyle said, that I think that in what you're kind of saying is, if nobody can do it until the end of 2023, 24, let's go out, let's say that, we can live with that and hopefully get a few different bids. And,
Yeah.
and if they make any sense, let's lock it in, because before you know it, it'll be the spring and,
Yeah, yeah,
we'll be that further, along on the timeline. So, if we could get it awarded and somebody
Yeah.
starts in November or whatever of next year, and it
Yeah.
extends out until March or April, why not,
that
right?
why not? Yeah. And
I agree.
I'd hate to be going to the council with one bid that's 65%.
I think I have a little bit of experience, but I think what happens is when contractors have so much work, they throw out a high bid.
Sure.
So
Right.
Yeah.
it's kind of human nature. So maybe, we can't predict, but maybe something will change.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just in terms of dollars to the town, what the 65% means
Yeah,
is for the town's 20% share, it would have been an additional $160,000.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
to
that-
talk scope of actual
okay,
funds.
all right,
So,
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Further questions on that? And you had one other one to talk about, the Babusick Brook Bridge and the intersection in that, that project is.
Yeah, there's really not much to update. Design
No.
is ongoing.
Okay, they're in the process of
Yeah.
design, okay. And, I think then, we're here at 1:30 now. Should probably talk about when we schedule our next meeting and we can follow up with the rest of these items. Unless somebody really wants to stay and talk about. But some people have to leave and I understand that. Any thoughts on this? We have the month of,
Not the 23rd.
December, no, no, I wouldn't say, even suggest that. And maybe the 30th of December, we could, is that, okay, that's,
Right before the.
What about January 6th?
you know,
January 6th. I can make that work, I think. January 6th, oh, this is 22. Need my other calendar. Yeah, I need a real calendar. That's, yeah. See what we've got here. January 7th is Friday.
Is it the 7th? Or
No, the 6th. The 6th is the Friday.
The 6th is a Friday.
Yeah.
And I can do that one.
That works.
All right.
Have a
Everybody-
motion? You want to make the motion, Bill?
Bill made the motion. I seconded it.
Oh,
It already
okay.
happened.
All right.
I'm ready to vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We're good. Unanimous.
motion to adjourn.
Second. Vote. We're in.
We're done. Okay, we're
Hey,
cooked.
Kyle, you got 2 minutes?
Sure. Thanks,
Yeah.
Austin.
Yeah, actually, I would like that. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah.
Yes,
Have a nice
yeah.
holiday.
Thank you for coming out. Sorry that took a little longer than.